I would like to see my community to come out and take advantage of some of the things that are going on a lot more than we see today. But on the other side, I would like to see more outreach, because I mean, it's amazing what's going on in Buffalo. I've seen the downfall, and now I'm seeing the rise, and I'm a part of it and excited to be. And I just would like more of, minority and women to come and be able to take advantage of what's happening here.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening whenever you may be listening, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast. I'm your host, Nate Benson, Director of Media here at 43 North. And for those of you who are longtime listeners, you may have noticed my title has changed, but we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Christian Johnson, founder and CEO of Driver Watchdog, a hardware device to make your kids or even your driving experience safer. But before we jump into this week's episode, I just want to remind you that on April 25th, that's a Wednesday, from 6 to 8 p.m. here at the 43 North Incubator, 640 Ellicott Street in downtown Buffalo. It's the second edition of Latitude Live, our live edition of the podcast. We want the general public to come on in and hear a great Q&A conversation with our 2017 winner, SunCare. Andrew Martinko from SunCare is joining us on the second edition of Latitude Live. Head on over to the 43 North social media pages or head on over to Eventbrite and search 43 North, and you can reserve your free ticket on April 25th, Wednesday, April 25th, that is, 6 to 8 p.m. here at 43 North. This week on the podcast, like I said earlier, we have Christian Johnson, founder and CEO of Driver Watchdog. So let's jump right into this week's episode and learn all about Driver Watchdog. Christian, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
For those listeners who don't know you, why don't you give us the quick pitch of who you are and what you do?
Well, again, I'm Christian Johnson, and I am the founder and president of a company called Driver Watchdog. And we develop a safe driving product and designed to improve driving habits and reward safe driving.
Doesn't seem like a worthwhile cause. Obviously, everyone knows how to drive just fine in Buffalo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you never see anybody looking down or around when they're driving.
My wife and kids and I were driving the other day, and there was a guy on the road just, he was literally, and I'm holding up my phone to my face like this while driving. And my wife was like an old lady, was tapping on the window. Hey, you're not being safe.
It's scary. It's scary. I saw someone literally eating crab legs while they were driving. Like,
That's
how
skill.
do you?
That's skill.
Yeah, how do you?
It's not safe, but it's skill.
Like a whole meal, they were. It's scary though.
I used to work on the road a lot in news. I certainly I certainly have my instances of not being a safe driver too, trying to eat, while you're driving to a news story 3 hours away. So I guess pot meat kettle type situation. So what is Driver Watchdog?
Driver Watchdog is a device that I created in order to have my own evidence, but also to proactively be able to correct bad driving behavior. And so when I created it, it was initially for my son and for teenagers first starting out to drive. So I wanted to be the first to be alerted if anything was to go wrong on the road. I wanted my own evidence, and I also wanted, again, to be able to monitor his driving behavior for up until a point to make sure that he is driving safely.
If I look, when I started driving in the 90s, there wasn't really cell phones. So like distracted driving was, futzing with your CDs or your radio or whatever. Now there's just so many other directions. What was it about? Why was this a thing for you? What was it about this cause, this problem that you wanted to try to fix?
So when I first started Driver Watchdog, it was right around the time that we just started to see an increase in police misconduct when minority and black people were getting pulled over.
Yeah.
And so my son was getting ready to get his permit at that time, and it was terrifying almost to me. And then at the same time, my mother is a police officer, and so we started also seeing ambushes on police officers.
Yeah.
So that was also terrifying. And so I wanted a way to be able to again, be the first to be alerted if anything was to go wrong, or to keep an eye on them. My mother also had a diabetic stroke when she was driving.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
So as we developed, we implemented some of the features to help with medical issues as well. But that's really the core of why I started and why it's so close to my heart. I really want to be able to protect the ones that I love while driving, and just researching and diving really headfirst into this, you just see so much tragedy that could be avoided on the roads, everything from consumers to commercial side. And so this is just my small little part of trying to make the road a little bit safer.
Dash cams have been around for a dozen or so years now from a consumer level. I mean, truck drivers have had them for almost 20 years now, but your everyday consumers only had it for about 15 years or so. What is it about Driver Watchdog that's different than a kind of, $50 dash cam that you can buy at Walmart or something like that?
Yeah, so we have several different differentiators. First of all, with a dash cam, it's usually connected to a Wi-Fi, and it's kind of unreliable. The video might be unreliable, but it's also, your information is stored on a SIM card, so you need to be able to go home and take that and download it. If the dash cam is destroyed, so is your evidence. Whereas Driver Watchdog, we're constantly streaming the information to the cloud, so it's stored there for you, so you will always have your information. We have things like a fatigue sensor that we put into our cameras because fatigue driving is a huge issue and it contributes to a lot of the accidents on the road. The biometric alerts, just like I was saying with my mother, if her blood pressure was to drop, it would pick that up. So we have a lot of robust technology within the device, but it also, we are not just focusing on the car or the road, we're really focusing on driver safety because that's where it really comes from. A lot of commercial industry black boxes or dash cams, they focus on vehicle maintenance and things like that. So we took that part out of it and we really focus on that driving behavior to make sure that, because that really does affect a company's bottom line as well. A couple of years ago, Coca-Cola was fined $21 million, when their driver was on the cell phone and hit somebody. So we're trying to protect that aspect on the commercial side. On the consumer side, it is plug and play. You can just take it from your rental car to your business car to your personal car if you need to. Your family stays connected. And it's not that everybody in your family can watch you. It's really only if there's a certain event triggered that they would get an alert and they would be able to know exactly where you are, what's happening, and be able to talk to you through the device.
It's funny, I talked to my parents who are in their 60s, and they're like, why would you want a camera? I never had a camera that could spy on you the whole time. I'm like, Mom, you had your ways of spying on me. I'm not stupid. I knew you were on the other line when I was on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
But, my wife and I, we have a smart baby camera, so we could work around the house, and, we never sat there constantly just staring at our kids sleeping. That's
no.
There's not that weird big brother dynamic. So there really wasn't, at least, I'm speaking for myself, there wasn't that malicious, I don't trust my kid who's only 5, so I'm just going to spy on them the whole time. That's obviously not the intent of something like this, right?
No, not at all. And, of course, that was my son's perspective when he learned I was starting it.
16-year-olds know everything, and they just think you're trying to ruin their lives.
Exactly.
Of course.
He was like, you're doing what? He was not happy. But, no, this is as simple as switching your email address. Once they display responsible driving habits, all they have to do is change their username and password on the application, and then only if they're in an accident or if they're getting pulled over, if they push the panic button, then I would be alerted, or a parent would be alerted and would be able to temporarily look in on the situation. So they're protecting themselves.
So you're streaming real time. I assume not full HD quality, but pretty high
close.
quality,
Yep.
pretty high quality video,
Yes.
720 probably. The biometric sensor is astounding. Can you explain how that actually works in the device with being able to detect if I've got a diabetic stroke or I've got low blood sugar or have some issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me, at the highest level, because I'm not the software engineer, but it is certain algorithms that they were able to put together that the camera actually is able to detect whether or not your blood pressure drops or it goes up. Almost in the same way that they are able to detect the fatigue with the fatigue sensor in there. It's still software driven, and so it's almost like the camera's able to pick up whether or not you're looking down, and that could really help with texting and driving too. But if your eyes are closed for too long, the device is going to go off and alert your emergency contacts. If your blood pressure drops it will, to a certain level, we're establishing those parameters because people can fluctuate sometimes. But same thing. The device would ring a little bit, and then it would alert either the fleet manager or somebody that you designated.
So, what was the? I know you talked about it a little bit. Why start a company, a tech company? What was the nexus of? Have you always had an entrepreneurial spirit, or was it you identified the problems happening in society on both sides with minority drivers, police attacks, things like that, and you had the answer. Was there anything prior to your upbringing that kind of sparked that entrepreneurship spirit?
I think, well, my parents were entrepreneurs.
Okay.
We had martial arts studios our whole entire life, so they owned those. So I think I got it from there. But I've always been the type of person to see a problem and just try to figure out how to solve it, whether or not it went to fruition. This is actually my second startup. I have a debt management company as well, but I've started I've invented several things that hasn't made it to fruition, but I think those are all preparation to get me to this point. So I think I've always been an entrepreneur.
There's saying, I haven't had 10 successes, I've had 10 failures, and whatever the phrase is, you keep trying something till it sticks. Starting a hardware tech company, though, not an easy task, right? From a venture capital fund, like what's been the challenges of starting a hardware company? Because that's not easy. It's
not easy at all, and we have to get it right, and we have to make sure that we're putting out a quality product. And so, the capital, of course. We as Black women are just underfunded. Period. Yeah. So the capital has been the barrier. I've started this 3 years ago, and so I just got a small angel investment in February. So for the past 3 years, I have been just grinding, like pitch competitions and taking the money from that and bootstrapping and begging and borrowing money from family members and friends to be able to still have a company today. So I think the capital barrier is obviously the challenge. We have been able to identify all of our vendors, our resources, our engineers, everybody, all the pieces are there. We just need the capital infusion to make it work. So I think that, and then also technology changing, and there's autonomous cars that will be out soon, and smart cars, and so we have to continuously keep up and pivot maybe sometimes if the technology is expanding. So that'd probably be the biggest challenges of running this hardware software company and making sure all the pieces of the puzzle work. And then when you have hardware, you got to make sure that your customers are using it correctly, and the upgrades and things like that. So we got a lot on our plate, but I have such a dedicated team. I'm so blessed to have people who have been sticking with me for this long. We don't get paid, so that's a blessing.
That's always difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's like one of those like sad laughs. Like, it's funny we don't get paid. It's
like laughing or crying. We don't sleep and we don't get paid. So
no, it's totally understandable. Not a lot of people realize just how big the divide is in terms of funding for women, especially Black women. How can you talk a little bit about just how hard that gap is or that mountain is to climb? Because it's really like the numbers astounding. I was talking to one of the 4th North winners, Ibn Masood, who's from the Middle East, a woman, and she was saying that statistically, like, I could have the same idea she would. I get funded like that.
Absolutely.
And 2 to 3%, that total funding dollars only goes to women, and of that subsect, Middle Eastern women or Black women, it's just like even smaller. It's just it's hard for, I think, people to understand the problem.
Oh, it's almost, I never try to use the word impossible, but it's close. And it's so people sometimes, and I'll joke, and it's just a joke, but they'll say, well, like, what wouldn't you do? And I'm like, I wouldn't be Black and I wouldn't be a woman if I'm trying to get funded. And it's a joke. But it's like, I hope and I see that we're making a lot of noise now, and we are and I think VCs and investors are starting to take note. It's very slow to come, but I think we're making a lot of noise, and all of my colleagues in this space, in the tech space especially. But it's hard. It's hard seeing someone, and I'd never call anybody's idea, dumb or ridiculous. Right. But it's hard to see something that, a product that is really trying to mean something, and a product that's not, that might be just novelty. And they just can get millions and then mess it up and come back and get more, and it's disheartening sometimes. And if you don't have that thick skin to be able to really understand what's going on and still be able to continue to move forward, it could stop you in your tracks. That's how most startups die, right? Money.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, we need money.
I think why you're starting to see some of that money now start trickle out, and not at the pace I'm sure all of us would like. Investors are starting to leave, their portfolios are starting to leave Silicon Valley, New York, and Boston, and they're starting to see, in Buffalo, it's a good idea.
That's right.
It's a woman. She's black. Okay, great. Whatever. Whereas before, like if you weren't in Silicon Valley, you didn't have access to those resources, and it's not cheap to live there. So like, people like you with a great idea, you can't just pick up and move your family to Silicon Valley and hoping to dream.
Right.
I think that's kind of why you're starting to see more and more VC dollars, right?
Absolutely, and it's very exciting what's going on in Buffalo. This is my hometown, born and raised here. But I would like to, and I mean on both sides, and I continuously talk about this, I would like to see my community to come out and take advantage of some of the things that are going on a lot more than we see today. But on the other side, I would like to see more outreach, because I mean it's amazing what's going on in Buffalo. I've seen the downfall, and now I'm seeing the rise, and I'm a part of it and excited to be. And I just would like more of minority and women to come and be able to take advantage of what's happening here. So. I'm optimistic, and I'm hoping that in some way I'm opening doors for people to come in behind me too. So it's all about the work.
Speaking of work, now a television star, or at least you're featured on a television show. Talk a little bit about the A&E show you were on.
Yeah, Rooster and Butch. I love those guys. These guys, I remember it was funny. Like a year ago, I was flicking through the channel, and they had the show on CNBC before it was on A&E, and I remember looking like for 5 minutes, like, oh, these guys would never invest in me, that mindset, like these hillbillies, they'll never invest in me. And
the math doesn't add up.
I never watched them again. So to have them reach out to me, I didn't apply. I think they saw me pitching at South by Southwest, and they reached out to me, but they never told me who I was going, what the show was, until I actually landed in Texas. So to be sitting across from them a year later pitching, it was just so surreal.
Yeah.
And because they got me and they understood what I was trying to do and why I was trying to do it, which I never thought they would. Yeah. And so, it's Mike McConaughey is Matthew McConaughey's brother, and then Butch Gilliam is his partner, and. Not only did they get me, but they will be customers because they understood the value for Driver Watchdog on their oil guys and in the oil industry and on big rigs and transportation, their trucks. So it was a great show. It was a week of challenges. My prototype broke because the airline broke it.
Oh, jeez.
When I landed.
No matter how many fragile stickers are on it, right? It doesn't matter. They just toss them down there.
I had to check it, and then so... I had nothing, and so I'm going through a whole week of pitching the concept and really trying to get them to understand what I was trying to do. And at the end, they did, and they ended up investing. So I was so excited that because when you hear people say, "Oh, investors invest in people, not the product,"
sure,
and so that really drove that home for me in that scenario. So it was exciting.
Obviously, your pitch worked, right? They invested in.
Exactly.
So what other outcomes have there been stemming from that?
We have. Customers that have reached out that are interested in testing for our beta testers, and then future customers. Hopefully, we've had investors reach out to us. I've been a part of Launch New York, but I'm re-engaging with them since the show and everything. So the publicity has been great. We were invited into the Forbes Women Council.
That's great.
Yeah. So the recognition has been great. But it all comes back to, that's like secondary. We want to get a great product out, so we need the money. So it's like, it's been great, but we really need the substance there. But yeah, so I talk to the guys often, and we're still negotiating our contracts. So, it's been a great
So what are some of the immediate needs, for Driver Watchdog? From either venture capital, staffing, what... Because I always like to say, you never know who's listening, who might be able to help with a problem and provide a solution.
So of course, capital, we definitely need to just to get the product out there. We don't even need that much. We have gotten to the point where we're able to identify and vet very good engineers and get it to production ready and get a certain amount of test units into our customers' vehicles, because we have customers lined up already. So it's really capital. I mean, it just really all goes. Our staff, we have all of the pieces really together. We work very closely with the University of Buffalo.
Okay.
And so, the glue is the money. Is to get
always
it going.
Want the money, right?
No, right? It sucks.
It's amazing how it
always goes back to the money. Right.
So it's not on the market yet, but you have customers lined up. You've got your engineering team. You just need the capital infusion.
Yeah,
right?
I kind of did it a little backwards. You know, you're supposed to get the money first
Right,
and go.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I haven't stopped, and the capital's coming slow, but the customers are coming, and so we definitely want to be able to meet that need.
Sure. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. Why don't you give us the elevator pitch of Driver Watchdog?
Driver Watchdog is a device that makes the road safer and every car a smart car. And it is a safety device to do three things. one, keep you informed. two, to be able to proactively correct bad behavior. And three, make sure that you always have your own evidence.
Perfect elevator. We went up one floor. All right. For those who want to learn more about Driver Watchdog, how can they get a hold of you and learn more about the company?
You can go to mydriverwatchdog.com for our website. We are on all social media platforms, Christian J_DWD on Twitter and Instagram, or at Driver Watchdog on both of those as well, and at Driver Watchdog on Facebook.
Fantastic. Christian, thank you so much for joining us, and we will
My pleasure.
catch up with you down the road.
Absolutely. You will not stop hearing from me.
Good. Cheers.
Cheers.
I want to thank Christian for joining us on the podcast this week. If you want to learn more about Driver Watchdog, head on over to their website and you can learn all about what they're trying to do to make you a safer driver. One last reminder on this podcast, head on over to Eventbrite or any of the 43 North social media channels and reserve your ticket for Wednesday, April 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the 43 North Incubator. It's the second edition of the Latitude Live podcast featuring 2017 43 North winner Andrew Martinko from SunCare. We're going to learn about Spot. What is Spot? Who is Spot? Is there a real Spot? And how will Spot keep you safe in the summer sun? And I really like that sentence because it's full of S's. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. Make sure you head on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. The more 5-star reviews we have, the more iTunes will push this podcast out, and that's what I want to hear. So please, take 5 minutes. It really doesn't even take 5 minutes. It takes like 45 seconds. I'm totally overplaying that. So please, leave a quick review if you like the podcast. And if you don't, send your disgruntled emails to podcast@43north.org. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm Nate Benson for 43 North. We'll see you at the next one.